sensual realm anymore. You begin to have to, it deals within you. It's like me sitting here talking to you this morning. I'm not like a charismatic preacher or whatever that gets all excited and jumps around. You get that, but I would rather much just talk to you and share things. And a lot of people will say, "Well, that's boring." Well, I can promise you, because I get it, where if it's ministering to your spirit within you, and there's a working taking place within you, it's not boring to me. I would much rather hear a reality than a form or an image of something. See, I can get up here and act like a preacher is supposed to act. What we say, what we understand of a preacher to be, or whatever you want to call it, I can get up here and do all that, but I'm just conforming myself to what the image of our understanding of what a preacher should be. How many of y'all know that Jesus didn't do all that? He didn't make a big scene, and he didn't even do the things that you see preachers do. Sonny, whenever he went to heal somebody, he didn't drag them up to the altar. He didn't do all the things that you see him do. He simply spoke to them. And when he spoke to that sickness had to leave, because the word done a job, and his word don't return void to him. So it has to take effect. And see, when the word don't return void, that means when it really does a work within you, it don't come back to him. It becomes implanted within you. That seed becomes implanted within you, and it becomes part of you. It's no different than the whatever you call it, of where the dove took off the ark, and went to try to find ground, good ground. In this day and time, the word, I believe, that's coming forth is sticking now. They have found ground where they can plant this word. This word can be planted. But a people is being prepared. And I believe this little remnant, whatever you want to call it, first fruit company, overcomers, whatever you want to call it, is a people that is being prepared for the coming of Jesus. And you say, well, why would they need to be prepared? Because if we understand that there's a temple being built, the tabernacle of David is being restored. It was restored in that Old Testament time. It's being restored spiritually now with the body. You are the lively stones being built that God is using. You're being built in order, if you can hear this, God has to prepare his remnant, a people, to build this tabernacle in order for them to minister back into creation. It's real tough for me to talk like this. If I just want to be straight up and plain about it, there has to be a people that has come forth, prepared by God, has been brought into that image in order for Christ to manifest himself through that body. People want to see Jesus. They can't wait for the Lord to return. He's here. He's within you. Why can't you see him? Because this body has to come together. This body has to come together of people, all in one mind, one accord, transformed into his image. The hands, the feet, all of that. And then a people will see him in that remnant. It ain't one glorious day where something's going to happen. It's a people has to be prepared in this day and time in order to fulfill that, where they in turn can bring in all the rest of creation. See, that's why creation is groaning for the manifestation of the sons. There's a creation within me that is groaning for that manifestation. I look for that in people. I want to see God in you. I'm looking for that in you. I'm not looking for your natural Adamic nature. I'm not looking for your own understanding. I want to see the Christ in you, not I, because that's where I want to draw from. That's who I want to draw life from. It's like whenever you have discernment, the way people talk to you and the way they act, you understand what you're hearing. You know if you're hearing from God because it ministers to your spirit. You also know if you're hearing from their old nature because it's usually a lot of whining or griping or talking bad about somebody. You hear them things. But I can also see God in people. But we all still struggle. You see, when the Adam and Eve was in Genesis, in the book of Genesis, where he told them, said, if you eat of this tree, you shall surely die. They fell under the law. They became under the law. We're under the law. But Jesus died for us in order to release us from that law of bondage. We want to say that he died for our sins, but he was the sin offering. He did die for our sins, but he died to release us from that law of sin and of bondage. So it's like, even though I do the best I can and I try hard to do right, I still fail. Why is that? And the question is, should I continue to condemn myself and think I'm not measuring up and think there's something wrong with me because I can't be sinless? Nothing I can do can keep me from being sinless. It's my nature. It's who this fleshly nature is. Nothing can change that. You were born into that. So don't condemn yourself anymore and beat yourself up and thinking that you're not meeting up to the standards or whatever. That's why a lot of people don't go to church. They say, well, the walls will fall in if I go in there. If a lot of people knew our real secrets, the walls would fall in on us. Let's just be real about it. If they knew the things that goes through our minds, the walls would fall in on us. We're no better than anybody else. But there's also a life within you that is sinless. There's a Christ nature within you that cannot sin. The question is, who do you identify with? They said a double-minded man is as unstable in all his ways. I'm double-minded. We're all double-minded right now. But I believe that God is changing our way of thinking. And the only way he can do that is through experiences that he has, where we receive a revelation of who he is, and that reality begins to change us. The only reason I'm standing here today is because there was a reality that happened, a situation happened to me where God became real to me. A reality happened, and nothing can change that or change my way of thinking of it because it was real. And see, that's the only way that I believe it can become real to us, is by God giving us an experience where it enlightens us. There has to be a people in this earth today that can manifest that type of reality. Because we can go out, this world has been evangelized. You can go out in the streets and preach for a week, 2 weeks. And you may have a couple come in that says they want to live right and dedicate their lives to the Lord. If I can say this, and I know that this is being recorded, but somebody's got to stand up and just be bold. And I'm no licensed preacher, and I don't have nothing to lose on that end. You can't dedicate yourself to God. I would love to say I'm dedicated to God, but that's a lie. And that's tough to say. I can say that I'm dedicated, but Pat, it won't be 2 hours from now where I lose that. Let's just be real. How do we dedicate ourselves to God? You can't. Only God can cause you to dedicate yourself. We got to go further. We've got to change our way of thinking. We've got to get out of ourselves. Like Aaron, Aaron comes to church faithfully now. I'm not going to say anything bad, Aaron. Aaron's sitting real straight right there. No, but something is drawing Aaron to come to church on Sundays. Only Aaron knows what that is. But there's something that's been drawing him to come to church on Sundays for the past year, 6 months, however long. And the thing of it is, but Aaron understands within himself that just coming to church is not what does it for him. There has to be something working within him for the reason he's doing it. And only he knows what it is. And it's like Aaron can say, well, I'm going to dedicate myself to God. But it wasn't Aaron's decision to dedicate himself to God. Something was working within him that drew him from wherever in order to begin a process within him. I wish I had that much power to dedicate myself to God. I don't. Because I'm a sinner. But there's a life within me that is working within me, that knows no sin. And I hope we can understand kind of what I'm saying here. Jesus is bringing us out from under the law. The law has its job to do condemnation, not to bring condemnation, but to bring justice to us in a place. But Jesus is bringing us out of that into where he says, I'm writing a new law in your minds and in your hearts. I'm beginning to change your nature, where it's not just a rules that you have to go by and live by, or a standard to live by, but I'm writing it in your heart and in your minds. That way it becomes a reality to you. When something is written in your heart and your mind, it's no longer a rule or regulation. It's just a reality to you. It's a nature. So these people here, this remnant that God is putting forth, they have to come together to be that tabernacle of David. And it says that, if you can go to Isaiah, I believe, chapter 60, Daisy. I'm throwing different Bible verses here, but I'll just read this. But there's a sacrifice, what we're talking about, to God that is different than the original sacrifices that we think of. What is a true sacrifice? How do we sacrifice ourselves to God? If I was to come up and say, God, I'm going to sacrifice myself to you this morning. I promise to you that I'm going to quit acting the way I do. I'm going to sacrifice my way of thinking. I'm going to do this. That's you sacrificing what you want to sacrifice. That don't work. It says, send lambs as a tribute to the ruler of the land, from Selah across the desert, in the mount of daughter Zion. Like fluttering birds flushed from the nest, so are the women of Moab and the fords of the son of Aaron. Make up your mind, Moab says. Remember, a decision. Make your shadow night, high noon. Oh, I think it's chapter 60. Sorry. I knew we was going down a rabbit trail there. Isaiah chapter 60. Yeah, it says, arise and shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. See, darkness covers the earth, and thick darkness is over the peoples. But the Lord rises upon you, and his glory appears over you. Nations will come to your light, and the kings to the brightness of your dawn. Get that. Nations will come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your dawn. What he's saying here is, darkness has covered the earth, but the Lord rises upon you, and his glory appears over you. Nations will come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your dawn. How many of y'all can see right now that darkness is covering this earth? Evil, whatever you want to call it, it's just continuously getting worse and worse and worse. And we can look at it through that perspective. But every time it came to a point, whenever it came to a point in time where it seemed like it couldn't get no worse, God raised up a new order. When Israel was so rebellious, making their own images, worshiping their own gods, and probably drove Moses to the end of himself, God raised up a new order. He raised up Joshua in order to take them into the land of Canaan. It's no different in this day and time. We're living in a world that is just, like I say, gone to hell in a handbasket. There's corruption. There's it's just man, just, had his way, and that's what man does. But God is raising up a people to fix things again. I truly believe it. I truly believe that there's an understanding coming forth, an enlightenment within a people, that they are going to have a substance that's able to heal people. Not by the ways of the church system and not by the old ordinances that we've seen, but simply by who they are. And it's not them, but it's the Christ that lives within them. There's a power that we don't understand. We would love to say we've got it figured out, but I don't think we've even wrapped our minds around it yet. We've figured it out on a level. We've figured it out in this plane right here that we're on. We've mastered church. Man has got church down to a T. They become they do the good. But I'm seeing further beyond that. And we have to start seeing further beyond that. We don't even know. How about this? Even the ones that has the big revelations, even the ones they call the kingdom ministers, when this thing really begins to unveil, they're going to have to move on too. There's going to even be a division between what we call kingdom preachers and the ones that God is really pulling on into the Melchizedek order. Because all of a sudden, their revelation ain't going to line up with their revelation because God's took them on. Because right now, if you're not, nobody's in the fullness, so there still has to be change take place. And the ones that think they are highly revelated and mighty kingdom preachers, when God begins to separate that order, that's just another order. Understand that. It's just another order. We can get up here and talk about big revelations and understanding and this and that, and that's fine. But it's still in part. It's still in part. So, there's still going to be a separating, a progression taking place. But he says, lift your eyes and look about you. All assemble and come to you. Your sons come from afar, and your daughters are carried on the hip. They will look, then you will look and be radiant. Your heart will throb and swell with joy. The wealth on the seas will be brought to you. The riches of the nations will come. Herd of camels will cover your land. Young camels and all from Sheba will come bearing gold and incense and proclaiming the praise of the Lord. It's saying all nations will come. Who are these that fly along like clouds, like doves to their nests? Surely the islands look to me, and the lead are the ships of Tarshish, bringing your children from afar. Foreigners will rebuild your walls, and their kings will serve you. Though in anger I struck you, in favor I will show you compassion. Your gates will always stand open. They will never shut day or night. And people may bring you the wealth of the nations, their king led in triumphal procession. For the nation and kingdom that will not serve you will perish. It will be utterly ruined. I'm going to read this real quick. It says, there is a sacrifice of praising God, praise to God, and the sacrifice of blessing to man. There is a double stream continuously going forth from the believer who is living in the realization of his priestly place, a stream of worshipful praise ascending to the throne, and a stream of active blessing flowing forth to a needy world. See, that was always the priest's job, was to be the mediator. He dealt with God, and then he dealt with the people. And it's no different in the church today. That's what your priest or pastor or whatever is he's the mediator that gets a word from God and comes in and delivers it to the people. I'm seeing beyond that. Somehow we've got to cut out the middleman and we go directly and we deal with God ourselves. See, but the thing of it is, now this is serious, the thing of it is if we go and deal directly with God, then something's going to happen to us. And it was no different with the people of Israel. Why did they not go up to the mountain to see God and talk to him themselves? What kept them from doing that? Fear. Fear is what held them back. They said, no, Moses, you go do it. And you come back and tell us what he said. It ain't no different with me here this morning. Why don't I go up in the mountain and talk to God myself? Fear. Fear is what's holding me back. You know why? Because once you begin to deal in that realm, things start changing within you, and you're going to start losing some things that you want to hang on to. That's what's holding people back, is fear of losing what you really don't want to lose. Fear of you changing in areas where you don't want to change. I can understand it, and I'm not condemning anybody, and I'm not talking bad about anybody, because I'm just as guilty as everybody else. But I believe the more that we understand things, the more we seek God out, the more He becomes a reality in life to us, the more comfortable we become going up that mountain ourselves. Because it's like if you don't want to go to you don't want to go to somebody's house and visit them if you don't know them. It'd be awkward. You wouldn't really know what to talk about, and you really wouldn't want to take orders from them. But the more you get to know somebody, and the more intimate relationship, the more bond that you have, then it's more comfortable for you to go visit with them, talk with them, take advice from them. You know what I'm saying? I'm just kind of giving an example. But we don't want to lose things. We don't want our nature to change. We're so content where we're at. But for some that has been given a vision, it's not enough. There'll never be a fulfillment within them until that vision is fulfilled. Now I believe really that revelation, the book of Revelation, when John had that revelation of Christ, we talk like we know it, that we understand it. Sonny, I don't think that we can begin to wrap our minds around what John was talking about. Pat, I don't think we can begin to even understand right now what John saw. Because it's way far out there. We can read it and get a natural knowledge about it. And God can reveal to us a little bit about it. But what He's seen was greater than anything probably we've ever experienced. Whenever I said the world has been evangelized, I said that a while ago, understand that this world ain't even begun to be evangelized. Sonny, this world ain't even started yet, the evangelism of the world. It's all been touched by man. I'm looking for an evangelism of the world, or a crusade, or whatever you want to call it, that is setting creation free from bondage. That's what a evangelism's going to be to me. Where you don't have a meeting one night and you pray for a few people and they leave and they're not changed or whatever. I'm talking about you don't even have to have a crusade. Like they say, when you go to Walmart, you change people that's in Walmart because they're in your presence. And you don't have to lay hands on them or anything, but the words that you speak has a substance, a reality in them that has power behind it. It's no different when Jesus healed the sick. He just spoke to them and they was healed. That sickness could not take the power that the substance of them words had. And this remnant or people or body that's coming forth is going to have a substance, a power within their words. But the thing of it is, God has to raise, we can't wish ourselves into being part of that body or that remnant. God has to draw you in there. So if you're not in that, don't try to make yourself part of something that God hasn't drawn you in for. You have a great purpose where you're at. And like he said, I wouldn't wish it on anybody in a natural speaking sense, from my Adamic nature. I wouldn't wish it on anybody to be called into that. Because like Clifton said Wednesday night, he asked me, he said, do you want to minister tonight? And I said no. And I meant it from the bottom of my heart. I didn't want to. And I could stay here this morning that I don't want to minister this morning. But I'm speaking that from my Adamic flesh. Understand that's where it's coming from. My flesh don't want me standing here. And is it a burden upon me? Very much so. It's not something that I look forward to, because it requires something of me. It requires a lot from me that I don't want to do. But when God has called you into that, you can either be miserable, know there's a calling on your life. Now, I say that humbly. I don't say that out of pride. Because like I say, it's a challenge to me. But I know that I can remember one night, I was still under the influence, drugs or whatever, and I carried a little Bible around with me all the time. I don't know why. I carried it in my little duffel bag that I carried with some change of clothes, whenever I was homeless and just stand wherever I could. I would keep that Bible with me. And every once in a while, I'd just read it. And I didn't know nothing about it. I just read it just because it made me feel good and gave me a little bit of relief within my mind, saying, well, you read the Bible, maybe God will save you another day. You know how that goes. There wasn't no substance behind it or nothing, but God had a plan in place. And I remember thinking, I used to always think, there's got to be more to this than this book that I'm reading. There's got to be more to this than just an old history story. Where's the big God that everybody talks about? How does this book here with this ink on it and this history lesson, what does that do? How does that, if God is who they say He is, then where's the power at? Why is people still struggling the way they are? Why is the world the way they are? And I remember I had a dream, and it had me standing in a big church, in them big fancy churches. And I was standing behind the pulpit there, looking. I had my Bible open, and I was standing like this, and there's all the people there, and it was all beautiful, big church, with this, how it goes. And I remember waking up out of that dream, and I remember thinking, what in the world? Where did that come from? Because I'm getting high every day and drinking, I was still there. How is that possible? And that must have been one of them wild fantasy dreams that, you had. But I remember that vision came to me, and the something within me spoke and said, you're going to be ministering one day. And I remember I laughed, because I thought of all it was going to take in order to get me to behind a pulpit. Sonny, I'm talking 17 years of drug addiction here. I'm planted. What all would it take to get me behind a pulpit? First off, I thought, you better start living right. That's going to be the first step. Next step is you're going to have to find you a church. The next step is you're going to have to gain the trust of the people to put you behind a pulpit. I thought, that's so far-fetched. Them ain't things I wanted to do. I was just thinking of what it would take for me to become a preacher one day. I thought, that's so far off. How in the world is that possible? Who in the world would ever, you can't wrap your mind around them things. You know what I mean, Wadey? Who would ever thought that, we would be, any of us would be where we're at here today from the time that you was back in where you used to be. But, so I never pursued that plan. Understand this, I never pursued this plan. I didn't come to church. I didn't even pursue coming to church as part of that plan. I didn't even remember that dream till a couple years ago. And I didn't pursue the plan that I took. I didn't plan on coming to church. I didn't plan on continuing coming to church. I planned on quitting drinking and doing drugs, because God really removed that from me, but it was by that experience that he removed it from me. It never took me into ministry, though. Ministry is not part of the plan. So I continued on, and I continued coming to church, and I whatever you do, I don't know. And then it progressed into one day, they said, well, you want to get up and share something? I don't know what to share. I can read a Bible verse. That don't mean it has much substance. Follow along with me. I'm kind of just saying this here for a reason. I didn't plan on wanting to be a preacher. I never asked Clifton, can I preach at your church? I never asked Sean, can I do this or do that? It was just one day I remember they said, do you want to share something? Yeah, I'll share something, whatever. And then it kind of continued. Time kind of went on. I've been here for 6 years now, I think. Time continued on. You want to share something? Yeah. As time continued to progress, I didn't never push it. I don't even know if I can stand here today and tell you that I've ever asked Clifton to preach here. I'm trying to think of a time right now when I did ask him that. And I can't remember it because I know that I probably didn't want to. So I've never asked to minister here. I didn't ask for this morning. He asked me if I could do it, and I said yes. If there's something within me that don't want to say no. And it's not my flesh, because my flesh wants to say no every time. But there's a nature and a spirit within me that is alive that doesn't want me to say no. And even though I can come in here and not have a lick of a word to say, I still do it because I trust in that reality that's been implanted within me. I trust that reality because it's real to me and I know that it's alive. So I have to lean on that. It's all I've got to lean on. So I'm not ever wanted to be a minister here, but God has brought me to this place. The Spirit has drew me and placed me in the arrangement that He has made, and I can tell you that it had nothing to do with my wants and needs, my own wants and needs. It was totally God's plan. And if I can tell you that I'm not perfect, and I don't claim to be perfect. So what makes me qualified to be here is not my own doings. It's God's doings. It's God's plan. See, I can't qualify to stand here. Sonny, the drug addict down on the street's just as qualified as me to stand here. But it's up to God. God has a plan. God has a priesthood in coming forth. And see, if we can go to Exodus, I'm gonna close. We'll get out of here early. But if we can go, the one thing I want you to understand is you've been called for a reason. You've been brought out of the ordinary for a reason. It ain't about numbers. It ain't about the big churches. It ain't about the fanciness. It's that God has separated a people unto Himself in order to form a higher order of priesthood for His work to be done through. There's nothing wrong with the old order of things because it has its place. But if you remember Mount Zion, where David's tabernacle was developed, the outer court was not there. Only the holy place was there. It's not that the outer court didn't serve a purpose, but in this new tabernacle, it's a different order. It's a different situation. It says, this is what you are to do to consecrate them. This is the consecration of the priest. If you The word consecrate is translated from a word with a strange meaning, literally meaning to fill the hand. The consecration means more than just our being consecrated and dedicated and the giving of ourselves wholly to God. It speaks of God accepting our consecration, receiving us, and imparting and inworking into our lives all that is needed to fulfill the ministry of the priesthood. He fills our hands. We don't do it. He fills our hands. This is what you are to do to consecrate them, so that they may serve me as priests. Take a young bull and 2 rams without defect, and from the finest wheat flour make round loaves without yeast, thick loaves without yeast, and with olive oil mixed in, and thin loaves without yeast, brushed with olive oil. We know all about that. It says, then bring Aaron and his sons to the entrance to the tent of meeting and wash them with water. Take the garments and dress Aaron with the tunic, the robe of the ephod, and the ephod itself and breastpiece. Fasten the ephod on him by his skillfully woven waistband. We know about that, assembling them, getting them equipped. Take the anointing oil, pouring on his head, brings his son and dress them in tunics. The priesthood is theirs by a lasting ordinance. Then you shall ordain Aaron and his sons. It says, he places within our hands that which is necessary to minister as priests. No priest can appear before God, can appear before either God or man empty-handed. But there is the ability and power of God given to us, that as priests we might have to minister both unto God and man. Consecration is what God does and not what we do. You know, I would like to think that just by coming to church for 6 years on a weekly basis would qualify me for that order. But it doesn't. Some people's been going to church for 40 years. That don't qualify them for that order. Only God can qualify you. Only God can bring you into that place. Only He can prepare you. It says, the whole process was initiated by God, not man. It was God who said to Moses that thou shalt consecrate Aaron and his sons. And then all that was performed in that service of consecration represents things that God does, not what man can do. Somehow, see, this is all new. Understand that. This is new. This whole Melchizedek order, what we're going to be hearing about it. Prepare yourself for it. Study it out. Read about it. Seek God about it. Because this is the order that's coming forth, is the Melchizedek order. And we don't know much about it. We know about it head knowledge-wise. But do we know about it spiritually? And that's what we need to get. We need to understand it spiritually. It's tough. It's really... I would love to get you all excited this morning and jacked up and, you know, the whole order of things, like the church, what we think church is supposed to be. But that's not the order God has me in. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry if you feel bored this morning. But I want you to understand, if we're really going into this new order, then things has to change. Things are going to change. The church order is going to change. If you want to stay back and hang out and continue to do the normal church thing and the same order of things, that's fine too. I can't make you go, and I can't make you change. But that's not the order that I'm in. And that's not what God has me. He's took me out of that and into where it's a reality. It's a serious thing. I would love to feel all good but I do within, because I know the seriousness of the power that's there. But my Adamic nature knows what lays ahead. The other day, I got a phone call, and I was asked to come minister. And the first thing I was thinking was, why should I go there? Or what's the purpose behind it? And I said that within myself, and I wanted God to show me the reason. And all the word came to me was touchstone. And when they take that rock and they drag it along something to see if check the purity of it, what I'm getting at is God's saying that He's about to try me like He's never tried me before. And when we step into this order, it's going to take that kind of discipline, that kind of correction, judgment, whatever you want to call it, because things are literally going to burn up within you of that flesh once that spirit. That I can't keep the Spirit of God from coming alive within me. And if it's God's purpose to bring me into a place, then there's going to be things burn up within me that I don't want burn up, and it's going to be a very horrendous feeling. But it's that kind of whatever you want to call it, that it's going to take if He's going to bring you in it. We have to be prepared for it and understand what's taking place. We can't think that always that bad things are happening to us. We have to learn by experience. Experiences is what changes us. He said He's going to test me like to try me. It's not that He's curious how I'm going to turn out, because He already knows. It's for my own self to have that experience to where a change can come forth within me, but it's also going to be probably one of the most trying times of my life. And I have to understand what's going on. But with the vision that I have, I understand, and I'm hoping to embrace this challenge. See, if there's that Bible verse of people without a vision will perish. And if I don't have a vision of what's taking place, then I won't understand it, and I'm just going to die because it's going to take me out. But I believe that we're stronger than that here this morning. I believe that God has given everybody here a vision of a greater plan. That we're willing to move on from the ordinary things. To be strong. To be able to stand in a place where no man stood before. To be able to take on an order that no man has ever been given. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about a priesthood coming together for the sake of creation. That's not an easy task. You're not talking about going to church and having an altar call service. You're talking about being a light in the land for all nations. Hey, what an honor that God's called you out. And it's not that He's leaving anybody behind. When them women was barren and they couldn't conceive, it was because what they was going to birth was going to be something special. We can birth things all the time. We have a woman nature within us that has a reproductive organ. And I speak of the soulish realm where it can reproduce. And we've birthed and birthed and birthed, like the pastor talked about Ishmael's. We've birthed all them things. And see, if we're not careful, we'll continue birthing, even with this new movement of where we're at right now. That was a birthing. But this birthing was special. That's why they was kept without able to conceive. See, this thing that you're going to be birthing is special. This man child. And what's neat about it is in the book of Revelation, whenever that the woman was birthing that child, that dragon was there waiting for that child to be birthed because he was going to eat it. And it's no different. See, what that symbolizes is everything the church system or the woman, however you want to look at it, has birthed. The dragon has always been able to eat it and devour it. And we know the dragon, the adversary, whatever you want to call it, can be simply carnality, our own understanding of things. But this man-child, it couldn't be touched. That dragon, as soon as the baby was born, it was called up to the throne. That dragon couldn't never touch it. And get this, once that that man-child was called up to the throne, it said the woman was whisked back off into the wilderness, and she was receiving from the man-child now. So the woman had nothing to offer that baby anymore. Nothing she could offer him was any good. He was offering stuff to her. So everything has been swallowed up, has been devoured by that dragon. But nothing, this birthing that's taking place within us, this new order that God's birthing within us, our own understanding ain't going to be able to touch it. Because it's going to be different. You know, I want to close with this. I want us to understand that somehow we have to get out of the way. That's going to be the hardest challenge. It ain't hard to come to church, and it ain't hard to listen to the preaching. What's hard is for us to get out of the way and let God fill our hands. Let God consecrate us. To fill our hands. His will, not our will. Because we've figured out how to do things. We've figured out how to handle things. But what if God breaks you down to a point to where you don't have an answer anymore? Some people's been brought to that point. You know, some people's been beat down. There's people right now that's homeless, that's strung out on drugs, that God's allowing. Don't ever think that God ain't in control. We may not see it, but them people that are out there struggling right now, God knows exactly where they're at. And He's allowing that to take place. We don't know the full reasoning behind it, and our own understanding can't wrap our minds around it. But understand that God had control of Pharaoh. He created Pharaoh for a purpose. And he was totally in control of what Pharaoh done. He was totally in control of what Saul done. He's totally in control of everything. We can't forget that. So there's people out there right now that are struggling. But He's breaking them. I was broken. Most of y'all was broken. Brought to a point where you said, God, I don't have any more answers. I don't know what to do anymore. You're going to have to lead me now. I remember I came to that point. And, you know, it goes back to when I first met everybody. I was at that point where I came to the end of myself in that area. And I said, God, if you're real, then you're going to have to do something. But it wasn't until I was at that point to where God stepped in and used me or done something with me. And check this out. It's no different with us here in this order that we're in the old order. Once again, we've figured out how to do church. We've mastered church. But what happens whenever that glory is not the same as it used to be? What happens when the glory's departed and went on to another place? And all of a sudden, church is just stagnant. Now, look, I say that in this sense. We can get up here and sing the great songs. We can play the prettiest music. We can have a preacher that is just hooping and hollering, and it can feed your 5 sense realm and get you all jacked up. And you can walk out of here and say, we had church today. That's not what I'm looking for. When I say stagnated, I say that word, that order. It's not there no more. It's no different than, I think it was a Gibeon where they built a tabernacle, but then David built his tabernacle on Mount Zion. That's where this new tabernacle is being built. You are the Zion people. You are the people. And so what happens when that glory is not there no more and it's done departed on into a new glory? Do we stick around in the same spot trying to keep that order alive? Or do we go on to that higher mountain where the Ark of the Covenant was, where the light shined for all nations out of that tabernacle? That's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for trying to keep the old order alive. I'm looking for the new order. I'm looking for, and I can't conjure it up. It has to become a reality in my life, and only God can bring me there. I'll read this real quick. This is my last closing. I said that a few times. It says, I want to read this real quick. The priests did not eat sin, they ate the sin offering. In the Hebrew language, a noun may be omitted, used as the noun. For example, in the tabernacle, there was the holy place and the most holy place. But the word place, however, does not appear in the Hebrew. It is simply the holy and the most holy. So, it's not like he went from that room into that room. It was just a shifting, a different place. It was like a different, you could even say it was a different realm or whatever. It wasn't he walked into one room and then walked into another room. So the priest did not go from the outer court into the holy place. He passed from the outer court into the holy. The same principle is used with the terms sin and sin offering. It is used for either sin or sin offering. He was made a sin offering. Under the law, the sin offering provided only for acts of unconscious transgression, mistakes, or unavoidable errors. It applied only to sins done through ignorance, passion, or weakness, in opposition to those done presumptuously, deliberately, or calculated. For sins done deliberately, there was no atonement, but only a certain looking for out of judgment. This point is extremely important because it reveals the deep and wonderful work of the sin offering. Sometimes it seems that we have not sinned. By the grace of the Lord, we have been kept through the entire day in His presence without any sins. It is possible. We do not sense that we have sinned, but we have a deeper feeling. It is quite strange. While we are saying, Lord, I praise Thee, Thou hast kept me the whole day. By the Spirit I have not sinned. We have a deeper feeling that within us something sinful. We sense that deeply within is something more sinful than any acts we might have committed. Something that, were it not for His restraining grace, would sin. It is sin. It is the power of sin that dwells in my members. This is the sin which is dealt so extensively in the book of Romans. I am not speaking of sins of outward actions, but it is a force, a nature. It dwells within me, but powerfully living within my members, it can drive me, it can defeat me, it can conquer me, it cause me to do things I do not want to do. It is a living nature. It is the serpent crawling about in the dust of our carnal minds, in the passions of our mortal bodies. Though we have been saved and have peace with God and one another, sin can cause us to think and talk and act in ways that are to our regenerated spirit, that is not lining up with our regenerated spirit. It is not cold, calculated, hostile, deliberate rebellion. No, it is not. It is something we have inherently from Adam. We did not choose it. We can't help it. We were born with it, and we are not to blame. It is in our blood. For this there is an offering, the sin offering. See, Jesus died for that reason. Understand something. You have that sinful nature. It's there. We can't allow that sinful nature to beat us, though, because it can convince us that we're not worthy, that we're in bad shape, of all these different things. But this life that's coming forth within us has the power to overcome all them thoughts. See, that's what being an overcomer is all about. The ability to overcome death, even. And I speak death in carnality. Death covers a multitude of things. So, the blood of Jesus was pure, and it was sinless blood. That's why he could declare that no man takes my life from me, but I lay it down in myself. I have power to lay it down, and I have the power to take it again. He poured out his blood in life. It ran into the earth, that he may give us life, that we might live. The difference is important. He died merely as a substitute in my place. If he died merely as a substitute in my place, then he is dead, and I am alive with my same old Adam life. If he died that I may not die, then old Adam's life is preserved. But if he died to give me his life, then the old Adam must die, and it is no longer I that liveth, but Christ who liveth within me. Now get this. It's like I say, it's not that I'm to die physically. It's to that life and that nature of the Adam must die. And what that means is, like I say, that there's another life within you that comes to life, and it overtakes that life, and that life dies. You don't die physically, but it's that nature within you that dies, and the new life has come forth. You know, it's a big deal, man. It's a lot. There's a lot. It's tough to talk about, but we have to start somewhere. And I know that people's been talking about this new man for a long time. And I've had the privilege of hearing about it now for the past few years. But I'm hearing something in this day and time that is I haven't never heard before. And I believe if we continue to press in, if we continue to empty ourselves and be willing with open hands to let God fill your hands, get your own understanding out of the way, and let God reveal himself to you. Not your own understanding, but his. That we're going to begin to see something and hear something in this day and time that we've never heard before. And it's not going to be some great big revelation. It's going to be a work within your spirit. You know, you're going to hear something within yourself. I'm not even talking about hearing something out of somebody's mouth, but God revealing it to you. You hearing that trumpet. You hearing that sound. And us not being afraid to go up on that mountain ourselves. But this morning, we got a great task ahead of us. I don't know. I would love to tell you the plan, but I don't have it. And I believe that God's going to draw some people in a new direction. Be prepared, because it may not be as glamorous as we think it's going to be. But it's just because there's things going to be done away within us that we don't want to let go of. But I praise God for everything. Let's all stand, and I'll ask Brother Pat to dismiss us. Yes, ma'am. Next Sunday, the 24th.